And hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and these are our night terrors. Welcome, everybody who is here and who is coming here. And good to see you all. Hope you're doing great. Having a great day, weekend. It's smokier than hell here. We are really inundated with the smoke from the wildfires that are blazing all around, and it's crazy. If you're on Facebook, head over to my Brent Thomas page. And I took a picture of the sun today, and it really, you can hardly tell it's the sun. It's just a reddish circle in the sky, and it's really pale red at that. It's just so thick here right now. It's just terrible. It just breaks my heart because there's so much going on with these fires, and it's been so dry, and God forbid, I don't know how they started. I have my suspicions, and it's absolutely horrible that people are actually starting them. But I sure hope that that's not the case, because what an absolute tragedy to destroy so much of the beautiful natural world. And I sure hope that that's not exclusively the case. I think they've caught some people that allegedly caught some people that were starting some of these fires, and it's such a horrible thing. Such a horrible thing. It just pains me. But unfortunately, the air is just thick. It's really getting dark right now because the sun can't shine through this stuff. And it's really not that, it should be much lighter outside than it is. But wow, it's pretty crazy. But what can you do? If you can look at the moon, then the fires were real bad. Here the moon looked like a neon pink maraschino cherry. That's what the sun looked like, and it's not even neon pink. The sun here looked like I don't know, like a pink sticker pasted on this gray background. It was just this pale pink sticker. Is the best thing I can equate it to, if that even makes sense. But it's hardly recognizable as the sun. I mean, it's just that thick. And it's surprising because I don't think there are some fires near here, which is horrible. But again, these forests are coniferous forests. So if you know anything about conifers, they burn. I mean, they burn quick, they burn hot, and they burn fast. And they spread like crazy because, that pine sap just goes like a match. It's just, it's just terrible. So unfortunately, the atmosphere around here really is pretty dark and gloomy. But it feels like fall hit on the day of that windstorm. It's just like, pow, the weather's changed this suddenly. So it's 2020. What can I say? It's just that year, and that's not what the show is about. But I just feel like I want to vent that. But if you want to see what the sun looked like, I guess I could just put it up on the screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I think I'll do that if you guys don't mind indulging me. I don't usually put my own Facebook up on screen here, but I just took this picture today, and I was like, oh my God, how is that even possible? But it is. I'm going to put it over on the screen here so you guys can see what the sun looked like today. And this is at about 2 this afternoon, so it's a really high in the sky sun. This is what it was. That's the sun, ladies and gentlemen. That is the sunlight. And it's terrible. Now, honest to God, it didn't look like an eyeball with my eyes, and it didn't look like this. I don't know. I don't know why it looks like an eyeball now, but it literally, that's the way my camera phone, or my phone's camera took the picture to make it look like an eyeball. But it was just basically all this pale pink color. Looking at it with my naked eyes. But yeah, that's what I was looking at today. That was the sun. So you wouldn't be getting any tanning out there today. Let me just tell you that. There'd be no tanning around here until this gets cleared up. But horrible. Absolutely horrible. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because that's just terrible. But it's wonderful to see all you guys coming in. Thank you so much for being here with me. As always, throughout the duration of our show, the phone lines are open. If you want to call and tell us a paranormal story of your own, we'd love to hear it. So please do that. Otherwise, I suppose I should tell you the number. 720-923-0500 is the number. 720-923-0500. So if you want to call in, I'll be waiting for you. But anyways, after that, all I can tell you is I hope you're ready because it's time for bed. We are back in action now, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Night Terrors. These are our shorter format shows, just about an hour long, dealing with ghostly encounters primarily, 99% of the time. But I guess I could throw in a different kind of show. But we've been doing such a smorgasbord on the 2-hour shows that, having 2 1-hour shows dedicated just to ghost stories doesn't seem so bad. New podcast went out today, too. So if you're interested in checking that out, please do. And you can find our podcasts all over the podcast universe on all of the podcast players. Just look for the Paranormal Portal on whatever platform you get your podcasts on. So as you're out there browsing around, check us out. I said browsing. It sounded more like a prowsing, but I did say a B, I think. At least that was my intention. So the first story I got for you guys tonight is coming from Hawaii, and it has to do with non-human entities. And these are kind of cool stories. Generally kind of cool because, a lot of people think there are ghosts out there. What are ghosts? Ghosts are what used to be people. That's what's left over. If they haven't transitioned, then they leave behind a ghost. But I'm pretty sure that we perceive a lot of different types of beings, but we just lump them all into that neat category of ghosts. And we always assume that it was a person, but in many cases, there are many, and I'm using air quotes here, spiritual entities that were never human. There are elementals, there are nature spirits, there are many different types of beings, shadow people, there's darker things that were never human. So there's all kinds of things. There's domovoys, the house spirits, et cetera, et cetera. So those were never people. They are just these, I don't know, almost, I don't want to say utilitarian because that would seem to imply that they're just, performing a function, kind of like an ant of the spirit world. But I think that they definitely have intelligence and they have purpose and they have, probably, a culture of some kind wherever they come from. But they were never people. So they sometimes can be really, they can be really intense hauntings, or they can be really benign hauntings. But they are out there. So I don't know if that's what we're going to be dealing with in this story, but let's check it out. There we go. Last week was very difficult for me. My wife traveled to Hawaii, the Big Island, to compete in the Merry Monarch Hula Festival. And when I'm alone, I tend to be visited by many unexplainable things, which I first believed was just paranoia. But since I became part of a unity, I noticed that many strange things ceased or were shared experiences between my wife and me. It's like I had a partner or sidekick. But last time she went to the festival, I felt something watching me throughout the entire night. Never had more than 3 hours of sleep a night because of that pressure in my room. But this time it was different. This time I got real sick. The day after she left, I began to feel like a cold was taking over. By Friday morning, my stomach felt like it was turning and I was nauseous. I felt extremely tired and my head was throbbing. I had to get to my meeting, which I was about to cancel, when my wife calls me. I tell her how I feel and she asked if I was still going to work. I know she would fight through illness to work, so I sucked it up and told her I was still going. I parked a couple blocks from my meeting place and dreaded the walk to the building. I was concentrating on not falling on my face. And then I hear a high-pitched chuckle. Above my parked vehicle is a myna, M-Y-N-A-H. I don't know what that means, but we're going to find out. It stared at me from the telephone wire it was perched upon. Well, I gave it a nod, hoping it would find someone else to poop, somewhere else to poop. I guess it's a bird, okay. And began walking to my destination. And as I turned the cross-section, a shadow swooped past my head. It was the same myna. It flew up onto the street sign in front of me, and I ignored it and just continued on. Once again, the myna flew past me onto a nearby tree. Well, I looked at it and clicked with my tongue. The myna just stared at me. I shrugged and just went across the street to the next block, and as I continued my walk, the myna stayed with me. Swooping down past me to landing a few yards in front of me, fence to wire, wire to sign, sign to post. It went with me all the way to the back entry of the office buildings. I got to the back gate area when the mina jumped up onto the railing right next to me. Well, I held out my hand and he never flinched. I brought out my cell phone and snapped a photo of it next to my hand. He unnervingly stared at me right into my eyes. Well, I then told the mina, I'm going now. Goodbye. And I walked into the courtyard, heading towards the stairwell that leads to my meeting room. I was dreading the stairs since I felt a bit woozy, and as I stepped onto the first part of the stairs, I feel a scratching on my backpack. I turned to see what the noise was, and it was the mina scurrying up my backpack. He walked onto my shoulder and just perched. That's wild. I looked at him and he stared into my left eye. Are you coming with me? I asked. And he just sat there. Well, I went up 3 flights of stairs with this wild creature on my shoulder. And when I got to my room, I asked, are you following me in? He stared into my left eye again without fear. Well, I opened the door and proceeded in, and I looked at my coworkers and exclaimed, well, look what followed me in. When they looked up, the bird immediately bolted out the door. One of the ladies asked, what the heck was that? I said it was a mina bird. It followed me from my car, and she replied, yeah, right. She came to the door, and the mina was still on the outside railing, staring at me still. Do you have your phone? She asked. Let me get a photo of you with your friend. Well, I stood next to the mina, but as she raised the cell phone, he started to walk away. Move closer to it, she said. And I moved next to it, and she pulled up the phone again, and the mina started moving away again, so she quickly snapped the picture. I need to get closer. He looks like the background. Or background, I guess it should have been one word, but it was written as two. She stepped off onto the office, out of the office, and the bird took off. And here's the strangest thing. When it left, my stomach was no longer aching. The pounding in my head stopped. I didn't feel nauseousness anymore, and I felt calm. Hawaii's mina birds are very independent and wild. They do not interact well with people. This bird was very different. He was consistently staring into my eyes, and he was very much afraid of the girl taking our picture. My ailments also ceased when he flew away, and I even felt better than normal, peaceful. My family has animal protectors, believe it or not, that are called aumakua. Aumakua. I'm trying here. Aumakua. Aumakua. Many Hawaiian families have these things, and my family Aumakua is the shark, however, not the mina. I'm not saying I'm unappreciative to this creature freeing me from my sickness. I'm just surprised, pleasantly surprised. This mina was a very gentle creature. I couldn't even feel it holding onto my shoulder. I've held tame birds before, and they dig in with their talons, but this one didn't. It almost felt like family. A soft hand on my shoulder. Anyone have any ideas or beliefs that could shed some light on this? Thanks for reading. Wow, that's an incredibly beautiful story. I love that. I really, really love that. I know that when you can connect with a wild animal, and of course with our domesticated animals, connecting with an animal is just beautiful. It's a very powerful thing. There's just a bond that transcends words and ideas. It's just a different kind of connection. And it's hard for me to put into words what I feel, but I have had experiences with very wild animals coming right up to me, and it's the most incredible feeling. It's like being blessed is the best way I can say it. It's like I don't know, like a nod of approval from the natural world. It's just a really, really neat feeling. In my case, it was, well, there's been a few through the years, but the most pronounced one for me was the fox. There was a little fox, and it was like the foxes are usually very, very pretty brightly colored, with that golden orange type of fur with the white tip on the end of the tail and stuff. and they're very, but this one was very muted. The colors were very muted. It was a very good sized fox. I mean, he must have been 20 or 30 pounds. I mean, he was pretty good size, but, or she, I don't know if it was a he or she. I never did know, but just never seemed afraid. And, I swear I saw this fox many times before, but it was at quite a distance. But then I just was outside in the nights. This is back in Minnesota, and I was standing on the lake shore, just on the edge of the grass where the sand would begin. And I heard this sound coming, and it was dark. And so I turned on my flashlight, and it happened with the skunk one other time, but this was the fox. And I turned on my flashlight that I had, and I shone it, and I was like, there's this fox, and he's just literally feet away from me, looking up at me. I'm like kind of perplexed. I'm like, okay, what do I do now? What's supposed to happen now? Because here I am standing outside, and here's this very wild fox just standing there looking at me. And of course, the first thing you think is there something wrong with this animal? Because not having the normal fear of humans for many people is a big red flag. It's like, that might be a sick animal. There might be something going on with it. And so I was very cautious, but it never acted aggressive at all. It just kind of looked at me and just stayed there. I took a few steps back, and it just kind of stayed right where it was. And I just stood out there with this fox very close to me. And then over the period of the next several days, before long, it was eating out of my hand. I was just, holding pieces of chicken down, and it would come up and eat out of my hand. It was just this really cool bonded feeling. And, I miss that so much because I haven't had a similar experience for quite some time. I've got squirrels out here that generally you can hand feed, but they're neighborhood squirrels. I can't take any credit for that. But it was just such a neat experience, but it's like a connection. And I think that there is something to that if you live your life in a centered, balanced way, and you have a I don't know, and I can't claim I always have this, but if you have a light soul, a loving soul, I think that nature and animals pick up on that. They say that dogs are excellent, and cats are excellent at picking up on people's truth. If a dog doesn't like somebody, people say pay attention to that, because that person might not be a good person. Now, it's not always the case, but it's kind of a good rule of thumb, I guess. But I don't know, something about the animals. And if any of you have had experiences like that, yeah, I mean, you'll know what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. Mary Bond says, yes, they do. Cha-Cha says she has a loving soul. Chris Kringle, how you doing? I've been good this year, just for the record, Chris. Want to make sure you got me on the right list. It says, I have a connection to my reindeer. Yes, you do. There is no question you do. And I'm glad you got all the whole Rudolph thing worked out. All those other deer were being just jerks. So I'm glad that got all straightened out. But yeah, I think Farm had a Piffian adopt me when he was 14. Oh, pigeon. I read everything from Farm, typos and all. I read it all. So animals love the, yeah, I'm sure they do. So I think there's something where if there's a harmony in you, that the animals will pick that up. I think that they do. I think that, animals are great at seeing through the truth of it. And if you ever watch Caesar, the dog whisperer, I used to watch his show, and I found it really interesting because he was basically saying that your animals are picking up your energy. And he didn't so much as say that, but he always said that if you're high tension, your animal's going to be high tension. They can read that. And he would say things like that. And basically that's a psychic link. If you've got that much anxiety, or if you're wound up tight, then your pet's probably going to be wound up tight too. So that dogs are reflections. And so if you're having trouble with your dog, you got to look at yourself as part of that, because they are reflecting something. And so, it's no secret that the animals are, I think, able to pick up on many things, and it's probably why they're the first things to pick up on spirits being around. So, cool story. I love that story. It's very beautiful. And in this case, it's like that bird came with a mission. I'm kind of curious, what does a myna look like? I gotta look that Hawaiian myna. Mina bird. Okay, I want to see what they look like because, I've never heard of this before. Okay, so let me put this on screen for you guys so you'll know what a mina bird looks like now. And it kind of gives some context to the story we just heard. So there's mina birds. They are a beautiful bird. Not extraordinarily bright colored, but, they got a cool quality to them. Looks like a real intensity in their eyes, huh? That's really cool. So that's a mina bird. And that was what basically, I don't know, it's like that thing came and processed his energy. And I think that that's beautiful. And I think that animals would do that. Oftentimes, growing up, I've mentioned that I was, I was always given a lot of esoteric wisdoms. And I was always told that the purring cats are wonderful. They're processing energy. And so if your cat crawls up on you and starts purring, that's a good thing. They're helping you process your energy. I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought it was a really neat thing. And I don't doubt it. I think they must have many different purposes in our lives. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So there's a cool start of the show. I love that start. Okay. I'm going to pull up some more. I only had one pulled up there. I don't know what this is. Okay, I'm not going to read that one. That sounds like one of those Twilighty kind of things. This is another one. Okay. Just pulling up a few because we love some variety here on the portal. All right, so I got a few more pulled up. We'll see where we get to. Some of these might be long. Nope, that first one's not real long. But it's got photos, and this will be a good one because we can talk about this. But this is from Indiana, and it's haunted places. My name is Christy, and this is my first time submitting a story, but I've been reading other people's stories for some time, and my family and I have lived in our house for almost 5 years now. And at first, there wasn't anything really scary happening, just the occasional watched feelings. But lately, when I say lately, I mean since about the second week of December 2008. This is an old story, just for the record. Up until now, things have gotten way more active. And this story was from 2009, so April of 2009, it looks like. On December 10th, my older sister and dad went to pick up my sister's car she just bought, and my mom and younger sister and I stayed home. We had some bells hanging on the door for Christmas decoration, and we were in the kitchen along with our cat, and the bells on the door just jingled for about 45 seconds and then stopped, and no sound. About a month later, I was sitting in my mom's room on the end of her bed talking about my sister's birthday party that we were planning, and I felt something sit down behind me. And I thought it was my cat, so I turned to pet him, and there was no one there, nothing there. Not even a minute later, it felt like someone grabbed the bed and started shaking it. My mom says she feels that all the time when she's trying to go to bed, like a kid is trying to climb up on the bed with her. Now, fast forward to April. The activity has actually picked up a lot. I think it might be because I got so interested and I started taking pictures and trying to communicate. My sisters were in the kitchen, and the door to my mom's room was open, and you could see right to her closet. And all of a sudden, my sister comes running into my room and told me she looked into my mom's room and the door opened slowly, and the pile of sheets fell onto the floor. 2 days later, I was home alone and expecting my sister within the hour to drop off my nephew so that she could go to an interview. So I took a shower and I was in my room getting dressed, and I heard the garage door opening and closing. So I thought my sister was going in and out getting clothes from the laundry room. So I went to see my nephew, and when I got to the living room, I didn't see her car in the driveway, but I still heard the door opening and closing. And when I turned the corner to the kitchen, and the door was just opening and closing, just like someone was there doing it. It did it about 3 times and then stayed open. And let me tell you, that door doesn't just swing freely. And it was locked before I got in the shower. Now here's my most recent experience. Last I was in my room about to go to sleep, and it was 12:47. I know because I heard my sister leave and I looked at the clock. Everyone was fast asleep and had been for a while. My mom and dad have jobs, and my younger sister goes to school. Well, after my sister left, I went through the house and made sure everything was off. So after making sure, I went back to my room and laid back down. 10 minutes later, I heard what sounded like an old man and a younger person. I couldn't tell if it was male or female, having some sort of a quiet argument, and I couldn't tell what they were saying, but it sounded like it was coming from my sister's room. So I got up and checked on her, and she was definitely asleep, and I looked outside, and there was nothing. And when I went back to bed, I didn't hear anything else, so I don't know what it could have been. I'm open to explanations and comments. I hope to hear from all of you. Thanks for reading. And here's some pictures I took of my dad in the kitchen right after my sister said she felt someone touch her neck. All right, so I guess I can pull up these pictures just to see what we got. I wish it wouldn't do this. Maybe I can do it this way. I'm going to pull it over for you guys to see. It's nothing really definitive at all, as far as I can see, but that doesn't mean nothing was happening. I don't mean it like that. Let me move this. Okay. So here's the first image. I guess I can do it like this. The first image is here. And I think they're talking about this down here. This little orby thing going on. I don't know. That's something, I guess. Maybe. It could be a lens flare because but there's no real hot spots on here. Usually when you see a lens flare, you look for a spot of reflection. Something that's really whited out. This could be, but it would seem a bit unusual. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's a ghost orb, but maybe it is. There's without it. Nothing there at all. And is that it? Just those two? I guess it's just those two. So it's this one and the other one. Previous here, it's there, and here it's not there. Yeah, maybe, but there is something up here. Is that there in the other one? Okay, so there is no flare up there, and it's down here. But now in this one, there's a hot spot up here, or a flare, or an orb. So maybe that is actually the motion of it going from here to here. That's interesting. I don't know. It's still not definitive, but in a house that has activity, and you can capture those kind of anomalies, it certainly could be paranormal. Again, orbs are a really tough way to justify the paranormal because, everybody and their brother sees orbs and captures orbs, and it's not really a unique phenomena. So, and most often it is just something reflecting light. Some people zoom way into those things and say, you can see a face. Well, you can see a face in your bowl of spaghetti if you're looking for it, or if you try to see a face. So I don't know, unless it's really a face, like looking like a photograph inside of a lens flare like that. I don't know. I think those things are kind of reaching. But at any rate, those are some lens flare stuff or orbs maybe, and that's what we got. So this one's a quick one. It's coming from Minnesota. It does have to do with orbs, but there are no photos with it. It has orbs, lights, or mists. But it says January 8th in 2009 at about 9:50 p.m. I was sitting in my dining room on the laptop talking to a friend on the phone. And all of a sudden, a ball of light went flying across the shades in front of the sliding glass doors. Sounds interesting. It was a really weird ball, bright in the middle, as bright as the light when you're welding. Oh, like an arc? Okay. The outer part of the ball was not completely round and not as bright as the inner part of the ball. Excuse me. And the light around it was like ridged and there was a trail of light behind it. It looked like a shooting star, and it fell at a slant downward. It didn't last long. I'd say from the time that it formed to the time it was gone was maybe only 2 feet in length. I immediately looked outside. No cars were around. The shades were shut. Too far for it to come from outside. Plus, it was on the inside of the shade. Now for the weirder part of this story. I texted my best friend, and name's the best friend, but I'm not going to do that, to ask her if spirits appeared as a very bright light, and I got no reply. I went to bed shortly after. In the morning, I got a call from her brother informing me that my friend had died that morning. Her trailer caught fire in Sandstone, and she was completely burnt. Oh, dear God. Very sad, since she never got to respond to that. Can someone please tell me what they think it was? Well, it might have been your friend visiting. The interesting thing is the trailer burned. Could it have been because something happened to her the night before, and there was something on the stove or something like that that led to the fire, and so that weird light may have been the friend visiting. And I'm reaching, but it's a little bit of a coincidence that this person would see this weird light and then find out that the friend that they were going to ask about it was, in fact, deceased. What a horrible thing. What a horrible thing. I hope they passed gently. God, I don't know. A fire would be a horrible way to go. I don't know. Very strange. Oh, Farm says, heard many stories like that, Brent. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, those kind of stories are profound. You're certainly welcome to call in, Farm, and tell me about them. But there are stories about that, like that. I've seen orbs again 2 times with my naked eyes, and that does. I mean, the ones I saw were very spherical. I mean, they were very circular. But I've got a new helper here in the studio. I got him today. He's a Magic 8-Ball. And if you want me to ask a question on your behalf, I can sure do that. Just put it in the chat in capital letters. What should I ask the Magic 8-Ball? And I will give you the answers. Now, this is a little safer than a Ouija board. But there's no doubt that the 8-Ball is indeed magic and may, in fact, give you guidance into your future. So I will say that. But I got the 8-Ball here. If you've got a question you'd like me to ask, then put it in capital letters in the chat, and we'll ask the 8-Ball together. Nothing inappropriate, though, please. It's a family show. Much safer, Farm says. Yeah, it is. I picked them up today at Walmart. I was like, no way. I got to get a Magic 8-Ball. All my life I've wanted a Magic 8-Ball. Isn't that stupid? Friends of mine had one, and I sat and played with it for hours. I was like, am I going to be rich? Am I going to be this? Am I going to be that? And, talking to the 8-Ball. And be like, oh, it's unclear. Ask again. I get a lot of those answers. But I'll be waiting. If I see something in all caps, I will ask the 8-Ball. See what kind of guidance we can give you. That's not a Deb Varner, but speaking of Deb Varner, she's going to be on the show in the beginning of October, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do another night of readings. So I think it's the first Friday. Let me see. Let me look at the calendar here. So she's going to be on, I think the 2nd is what we decided. So Deb will be joining us on the 2nd of October, or the 3rd, 2nd or 3rd. But I'll solidify that for you. But it'll be much better than the 8-Ball. But Aussie's asking 8-Ball, should Brent read a story involving a parasigi? What the hell's that? Like one of those electronic SIGs? I don't know any stories like that. But I'll ask since you asked. And it says, what the hell does it say? Jesus, it's hard to read. Let me see. It says, cannot predict now. So there'll be no parasig stories now. So I told you it was magical. Is Anubis your guardian angel? Good question, Cashew. let's see. All right. Let's see what the 8-ball says. Is Anubis? And then we'll find out what the answer to Audrey's question is. And it says, oh, it's flipping. It's right on the ridge. It's like right on the ridge. Come on, give me an answer. I got to do this, see what it does. As I see it, yes. So Anubis is. Even though he's a little brat sometimes, he's still my guardian angel. Anubis is running the show, yeah. Okay, Audrey, I will see what it says about moving to the high Arctic for work. Wow, that would be a hell of a job. Wouldn't that be a long winter? Oof. All right, it says, oh, cannot predict now. Let's ask that one again, because I think you need some guidance here. Come on, 8-ball, don't let us down. Well, should Audrey and Jamie do this? All right. Signs point to yes. Signs point to yes. So I would say that might not be a bad idea, according to the 8-ball. Now, I wouldn't want you to base your future on the 8-ball, but if you're around on October, we can ask Deb. If callers to the show, of course, get free psychic readings, and that would be a great time to ask questions like that. She's good like that. Yeah, but Arctic, yeah. All right, so let's see. Did I read this one? No, I don't think I did. No, I did read this one. Okay, got to close it. I get sidetracked. And then I reread stories. It happens usually from one episode to the next, but I almost did it right now on the same show. That would have been stupid. That would have been a whole new level of stupid for me. But I'm always happy to break new records, forge new paths into the paranormal portal. This one's coming from Texas. Any more questions? What does that say? A parapsychy is a story where the person experiences something paranormal when they have a cigarette. Oh my God, Aussie, there's so many Siggy stories. In fact, Don's always joking that we should do a T-shirt that shows cigarettes, and having tie into the paranormal, because so many of the stories that we've covered on the show is I was outside having a cigarette when, and then it's some incredible tale. One of which I'll just paraphrase it. It was pretty wild. It happened it was on a show that we were doing about like hospitals, ghost stories from hospitals and stuff. And what the story was, the guy came into work, and every time before work, he would stand outside and smoke a cigarette. And there was this one, it was in a nursing home. And there was this one resident that would always be out there and always bum a cigarette from him. And they would smoke the cigarette together before he started his shift. And he'd done this for a long time. And one day he came in and came in and had a cigarette, and sure enough, there was the resident standing there. So he gave him a cigarette, and he said the guy didn't really say anything, but they just both smoked the cigarette together, and pretty much quiet. And then he went in to do his shift, and they, of course, gave him the rundown of what had been happening since his last shift. And one of the things that came up was that resident had passed away the day before, but he shared a cigarette with them before going into work. Does that not cook your bacon? I mean, really? Seriously? I got to tell you, that would be something else. Now, I think it's a cool story. It's a really cool story, because this person stood in the presence of a perfectly manifest spirit. And what an experience. Now, those kind of stories really lead me to believe that it's very possible that we've all either had discussions with people that really weren't there in bodies. Maybe we've all seen ghosts. And I always think, I'm the type of person that likes to smile and say hello to people. It's just the way I am. And it always kind of puts me off when I like, oh, hey, hi, how are you? And the people just kind of just go straight ahead and they don't even acknowledge you. It's like, oh, wow, that's really not too warm and nice. Now, some people just, aren't into that being nice to strangers thing, but it always irks me. But then I've thought since doing the show, it's like, what if those are spirits? What if those are the ones that don't acknowledge you? Could be just perfectly manifest spirits wandering around. And I guess it's possible. I don't know. I don't know. But I think the way people describe these spirits, and many people have had these encounters and they knew there were spirits, like deceased relatives appearing. Frank Castle, a good friend of ours, who does his show Fearless, with Frank Castle. He was on, and he told the story of, I think it was his aunt or grandmother that died, and he said that he was mourning her death, and he was in his kitchen, and he looked down and then looked up, and there stood his relative, perfect, just as real as if she was alive. There was no distinction that it was anything but a person. And then he said she faded away in front of him. And that's when he knew, like, I mean, he knew she was passed anyway, but there she was standing in front of him. And I think she just kind of faded away really quickly. And he was just left, holding that idea that, wow, she was right here. And there was no, I think that if they are perfectly manifest like that, there's no way to differentiate it because, we all have our bubbles. We don't go over, and always come up and, pat strangers and stuff. Now, with somebody that you love, you'd think you'd maybe want to hug, but at the same time, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd be like, wait a minute, I know you're not really here like I'm used to. I'll keep my distance. And, I think there's that. But I think of the possibility that maybe we've all encountered these spirits wandering around, but they're just so perfectly formed and manifest that there's no way to tell that they're not actually there. Just food for thought. Any more questions for the 8 Ball before I continue? I'm just scrolling up here. Brent said power. Yes, I said power. We all have the power. No more questions for the 8 Ball. Okay. At least none that I'm seeing here. All right, so we'll continue on. This one is from Texas, and it has to do with ghost hunting. That's interesting. We don't get a lot of these. My group of friends is extremely interested in the paranormal. We've had several ghost encounters in graveyards and mostly via voice recordings, but we've never had anything like this. Tonight, as the sun was setting, we went to a family cemetery outside of town that we had seen several times. We always found some excuse not to go there at night, which is good. But with the sun still casting shadows over the gravestones, it didn't seem nearly as foreboding as it had before. But we were wrong. It started out really fine. The cemetery is really old, and it's in horrible disrepair. The gravestones near the front that are still legible read from the mid-1800s, and we counted at least a dozen plots for children, affirmed as children's plots not by the ineligible markers, but from the stone borders that surrounded most of the plots. Near the back of the cemetery was a small area with between 10 and 12 markers under the shade of a large tree. By the time we reached this area, the sun had set and dusk was quickly darkening. My boyfriend had a horrible feeling like he was going to throw up and said that we should go back to the truck, but I was insistent. It seemed like something was pulling me back to the shaded markers. I argued with him for a moment and told him that I was going to go and look at the graves, and then we could leave. As soon as I turned back towards the graves and lifted my foot, I became extremely lightheaded and found that my legs would not carry me any further. I began to shake all over and could not move back towards the exit of the cemetery. After struggling with a wave of nauseousness and dizziness for a moment, my vision began to blur and I surrendered. One thought filled my head because my mouth could not move. As soon as I conceded that I would leave and that I did not mean to invade their privacy, my foot touched the ground, and I am not ashamed to say that I hit the ground running. The sickness lingered, and even when I arrived home, I was still suffering from sweats and chills and vomiting. To any Central Texans who may be reading this story, do not attempt to enter graveyard on CR 224. Even in groups, it is not safe. I only hope that this illness will pass. I've certainly learned my lesson. Yeah, that's pretty intense. I don't know. I don't know what lingers at cemeteries. I don't know if it's necessarily always the people that used to own those bodies, or if it's something else. Is there other kind of beings that may persist in those areas, perhaps feeding off whatever life energy is left in the corpses under the ground? I don't know. We certainly have heard many people indicate that there are beings spiritual beings that do try to drain the life force of people. They drain the inner energy. Sometimes they just drain negative energy. Sometimes not. There's stories of the shadow people, of course, being a big one, and they usually target the very young or the very old. And and I know this is absolute speculation, but I often wonder about things like SIDS in infants, if that could be a possibility. That they're so vulnerable. Those little babies are so vulnerable. And then again, I get back to the other night we were covering a story where the people had their baby's room in the other end of the house. It's like, why would you do that? I mean, if something's wrong with that child, you're nowhere near. You're nowhere near to be able to help. But to each their own. But I wonder about that, and I don't like to believe that could be possible, because I always like to believe that there's an overriding force of good, and deceased ancestors and relatives would look over those new additions, but maybe not always. Maybe they can't always be there, or something something else is at issue. But it's certainly a tragic thought if that is the case, and it breaks my heart. But I'm just putting it out there because there's a lot of negative things in the spiritual realm. I think maybe they're not just in this one plane. Maybe there's lots of different planes that we perceive as the spirit world, as the next world, and maybe they're not. Maybe there's just a whole host of different planes and realms that we perceive as spiritual, but there maybe not. Maybe there's lower vibrational realms where these dark, ugly things are, and maybe there's higher vibrational realms that we would go to upon our passing, or not, depending on the person we were, how we lived our life. But it's certainly food for thought. I don't know. I'm just spiderwebbing off of this because ideas come to me as I do this show. A lot of times I just think out loud with you guys, because these are the thoughts that come through my head, and I hope that that's okay. I've gotten plenty of feedback that says you guys are okay with that, which is good. But at the same time, I don't mean to push my beliefs out there and pretend like I know something that I don't, because I'll be the first to tell you that there's no experts. Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. We've just got schools of thought and theories and ideas. And many times they're based upon spiritual understanding or religious understanding, and that's good. That's fine, because at least there's a long-standing tradition attached to that. But many times they're not. They're just us speculating wildly, which I do. I do that. I'm guilty of that. So again, I never want to put people off with my ideas or try to imply that I have a deeper understanding of any of this, because I really don't. I just got a hell of a lot of questions and a hell of a lot of ideas. So the next one's coming from Illinois, and this is haunted places. This is an experience I will never forget. My friend Matt had just bought a house on the other side of town from where I had lived. A few weeks of living there, and he called me and asked if he could come and visit. I could come visit him at his house. Hearing him say it that way certainly got my attention, and of course I went. Having experiences all my life, he knew he could trust me to tell him if anything strange was going on. First, we walked up the steps to his bedroom, and he sat on the bed, and he explained that when he retires for the evening, he is always awoken by something jumping on the bed. It feels like a dog that is ready for slumber with its master, but my friend, he has no animals. He said it happens every night twice, and then nothing else happens. Then he led me down to the basement, which was small and didn't seem to fit the layout of the house upstairs. It just kind of went into a different direction and then the home itself. Strange, I thought, and entered the tiny hallway. Sounds like that's a rebuild. Hearing soft whispers, I walked to the last room. He was standing by the stairs still and called to me that he never goes over there. He feels sick when he does. Well, I entered the small room. It was dark. In the corner, shadows could be seen, and when I walked further into the room and turned on the light, I saw two small children facing the corner of the room. The walls of the small enclosure had been drawn on with crayons The pictures were faded, but you could see that they had been there a while. When I knelt down, I asked out loud, "Are you all right?" They both turned to me at the same time. Half of the little girl's face was burnt, and she was missing an eye on the left side, and the boy was smaller than her, and he was burnt all over his face, and most of his hair was gone as well. Not expecting to see them in that condition, I yelped before they disappeared. The light went off, and of course I got up quick and almost ran over my friend who was still by the stairs. After telling him what I had seen, he went to find the history of the house. He learned that there was a different house in that location, one with a basement. A candle had been knocked over while the parents and children slept, and no one made it out. The basement they left for some odd reason and built a larger home over it. So now when he goes to bed, he says goodnight to the children, who he and I think crawl in bed with him for comfort. Other things that happen in the home is the smell of firewood, giggling, things disappearing and showing up in weird locations, and he still gets 2 nightly visits. Nothing bad. And he said he's okay with that. Yeah, that's, as soon as she said the basement was different, I was like, yeah, that's a rebuild. There's something happened there. It's what a horrible tragedy. And again, the first thing I think about is, well, where's the parents' spirits? Where are they? Are they still there as well? It makes you wonder. I don't know. Again, more questions than answers, but that's how it rolls here on the portal. Excuse me. This one's kind of long. I guess, you know what? I'll read this last story. It's a long story, but we're going to have 2 days without the portal live shows, so I'll leave you with one big long one. I hope it's a good one. I haven't pre-read it, so we'll be hearing it together. But very interesting. I got to get a drink, though. 2 nightly visits for him. He means that he felt it twice. His bed would rustle twice each night. And that was what kept him up. So, let's get to this story. This is from New York. Has to do with a haunted place. Now, this one's a little longer. We're probably going to be in overtime by the time I get through this. But if you're willing to stick here with me, I'll read the whole thing. It was summer of 1992 and about a year after my first paranormal experience. I was dating my girlfriend and eventually wife, Terry, for several months. We decided that since I spent most of my time at her apartment, that it was time for me to move in. The house was large, 1860s federal-style brick residence. It was built by a pair of brothers who were leaving for the Civil War and was created to provide a place for their sisters to live while they were away. Although the building was now split into 4 apartments, other than one small bedroom in the back of the building, 3 of the apartments were exclusively on the first floor. The original front door was converted to a private entrance with a spiral staircase which now led to our spacious second-floor apartment. I'd been living there approximately a week when one evening, while searching for something on the television, Terry decided that she would go relax in the warm bed, or a warm bath, rather. Bath. The apartment from front to back consisted of a living room separated by glass French doors from a dining room which led to the kitchen. As you entered the apartment from the staircase, the living room was on the right and the hallway extended left around the stair opening to 2 attached bedrooms, a bath, and also had a doorway into the dining room. As Terry ran her bath, I laid down on the couch, which was positioned against the wall adjacent to the hallway and stairwell. And she finished running the bath and went into the bathroom and closed the door behind her. I continued watching television for approximately 10 minutes when from the hallway I heard a door open. I presumed it was the bathroom door, and I thought that was a shorter bath than normal for her. Shortly after I heard the door open, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Hearing the footsteps, I thought it was strange that she had taken her shoes into the bathroom with her. The footsteps went the length of the hall and then could be heard on the stairs. When the sound reached the bottom of the stairs, the front door opened and then closed. She must be checking the mail or getting something out of her car, I presumed. Well, 10 minutes passed, then 20 minutes. and she didn't return. Thinking she bumped into one of the neighbors and was talking, I went down the stairs to see what she was up to. She was not on the front porch, and her car had not been moved. I called for her, but she didn't answer. I went up the stairs, and upon reaching the top, noticed that the bathroom door was closed. I walked to the door and opened it, and Terry was laying in the tub, listening to her Walkman, oblivious to anything that I had just experienced. When she got out of the bath, we discussed what had happened, and we were somewhat unnerved. We went to bed shortly after and were lying in bed, still talking about it, when I started to feel a vibration in the bed. "Why is the bed moving?" I asked, and the next thing I knew, the comforter we were under was thrown over my head. When I pulled it back, Terry was standing in the hallway, peeking around the corner into the bedroom. "You can feel that?" she said. I thought it was just me. "It does it all the time." "All the time?" a whispered voice from the attached bedroom responded. I sat up and turned towards the adjacent room, and then turned to Terry, who was standing open-mouthed in the doorway. Although her reaction already had revealed the answer, "Did you hear that?" I gasped, and her reply was interrupted by a loud hiss and me leaping from the bed in response to our panic cat jumping on me and off the bed as it scrambled through the doorway Terry was standing in. We lived in the apartment for 7 more years after that night. We had several unexplainable experiences. A 3-foot-long antique bugle-like horn that we had hanging on the wall over the French doors in the dining room was found standing on end on the hardwood floor, and when we arrived home one day. A sharpened steel hanging on a peg in the kitchen would begin swinging and would not stop until you placed your hand on it. And our cat, who lived in the apartment for 5 years, went missing one day. It had somehow knocked a screen out of one of the 6-foot-tall windows and had fallen 2 stories to the ground in a rainstorm. The cat always slept on a foot-wide windowsill, so it was familiar with the surroundings. The screens had custom-made wooden frames and would have taken all of the cat's strength, or strength of some unknown force, to dislodge the frame. The entire screen and frame fell outward to the ground. We found her the next day, disoriented but unharmed, under a neighbor's porch. I mentioned to Terry one day many times I had sensed or seen, out of the corner of my eye, a small child standing behind a rocking chair in the corner of the spare bedroom. I told her that whenever I would turn to look, it would be gone. She sat down and described the little boy in Amish-style clothing perfectly. I began working at a restaurant when I started college in 1995. I met a girl at the restaurant who lived on the same street about a block from our home. When I told her where we lived, she replied, "Oh, you live in the haunted house." Well, as it turns out, a friend of hers was one of the many downstairs tenants who had lived there during our stay. As she related it to me, her friend was in her apartment one evening, which was right below our living room and dining room, when she heard a baby begin to cry in our apartment overhead. The crying soon changed to the screaming of what she presumed was an inconsolable sick child. She knew us well enough to know that we had no children. The wailing went on for the better part of an hour until the girl got so upset at hearing the child cry, she decided to see if she could help us in some way. She exited her apartment and walked around to the front porch and knocked on our door. The crying immediately stopped. She knocked repeatedly and no one came to the door, and no lights were on in our upstairs windows. She returned to her apartment and later witnessed us arriving home shortly after. 2 hours later, she moved out of the building. In 2000, I was chosen for a job I had applied for in Maine. We packed up our belongings that we intended to take in our personal cars, and a moving company that my new employer had provided packed the rest for delivery to Maine. We lived amongst boxes and crates for a week leading up to moving day. I came home one afternoon and discovered broken glass all over the spare bedroom. The bedroom had a closet which was an abbreviated converted staircase, which has 2 steps lower than the floor to the spare room. A few years before, we had set a mirror we had replaced from a large antique dresser in the back of the closet just to keep it out of the way until we could dispose of it. It weighed about 80 pounds and was leaning against the back wall, with the bottom of the glass about 8 inches from the wall. Something had pushed the 4-foot by 3-foot piece of glass away from the brick wall and shattered it against the spare room landing. Regardless of this protest from our unseen roommates, we bid the house farewell 2 days later and never went back. Wow, that's intense. That is intense, but I hope you guys enjoyed our journey into the paranormal portal tonight. I enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, there's no shows the next 2 nights, Monday and Tuesday. Those are my days, my sanity days, and trying to catch up and work on show stuff. So, which there's a ton of it building up. So I got a lot of things to do, but I will miss you guys. I will be back, however, in just a couple of days. Don and I will be back on Wednesday, and I hope you'll join us then for our 2-hour Wednesday shows. So until then, just remember that if you need some portal, there's over 800 episodes right here on YouTube you can check out of previous streams. And there's also 200 podcast episodes out there. And, there's lots of portal out there if you look for it. So I hope you guys will do that. If you're a listener of the podcast and you like the shows, please, if you're on iTunes, leave us a good review. Or if you're on Stitcher, leave us a review. Or if any of the platforms have the ability to review, we'd really appreciate it. It certainly helps to get the shows promoted on those platforms a little better. So any help you can give, we really appreciate. If you want to help support the show, look down in the description. There's a Teespring site. There's a PayPal link up in the top corner of your screen right now, right over here. Yeah, right there. And, there's always ways to help. Otherwise, a big help is just to keep watching. Please like the streams. Get subscribed if you're not. We really appreciate that. And spread the word. If you know people that are into the paranormal, let them know about the portal. We'd love to meet new people. We love it all the time when new people come in. But that's what we got for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed our journey into the paranormal portal night terrors. Again, I'll be back on Wednesday, so I hope you guys have a great couple days. And I'll be back right here, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Wednesday night, waiting for you. So until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful days and sweet dreams.